Hello everyone, I'm Rich Lamont and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. So this video is for the Kate Fly giveaway. The Kate Fly is size 3.0 and I wanted to do this video so that way if I'm unable to meet via video or however with the winner of the kit, the winner at least has this there for guidance. Because I think I'm probably going to use the Kate as kind of a regular for giveaways. It's a simple enough fly to put together, and it's a good one for people to learn. It doesn't have overly complicated stuff, but it's got enough that enough of the different components of a salmon fly that the newer tires would get a feel for how a salmon fly goes. So the thread that I'm using is Vivis size 12.0. I do recommend something in a similar size. Maybe a 30 denier with like GSP, or you can even go up to like a 74 denier thread. So the hook that I'm using for this one is a Byron Bjork hook. This is a 3.0 Harrison Bartlett. The giveaway fly comes with a Partridge CS6. It's a less expensive hook. It's kind of a generic, mass-produced hook, whereas the Byron hook is a handmade hook. Each one, all the detail is done by hand, but all the kits are going to be coming with Byron hooks from now on. Mr. Byron Bjork has reached out to me and offered to supply the hooks for these kits. So from now on, these are the hooks that you will be getting in your kit. If you are the winner, excuse me. So I'm starting with my Vivis black thread, and we're going to tie in just below where the gradient in the hook changes, the thickness of the hook shank. Now the silk gut that is supplied with the kit, it is authentic silk gut. It does need to be soaked a little bit longer than other silk guts for some reason. I typically soak this for about an hour or maybe a little more. I've even soaked it as long as overnight. So if you're a recipient of one of these kits, plan to soak your silk gut for at least an hour before you tie. So now what we'll do is you're going to bend the gut into like a U shape, and then you're going to tuck it in underneath the hook shank, and you're going to carry it most of the way down the hook shank. You want to have just a little bit of an opening at the end, but you see where I'm tying in a good, a quarter-inch back, maybe a half-inch back off the tip of the hook. And what that's going to do is, once you tie it on, as you wrap forward with your thread, that'll slowly close that loop instead of trying to pinch it closed with your fingers. This way you'll get a better loop, a better eye on it. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot of room there, but just enough. And then we'll wrap this thread almost about 3/4 of the way back down the hook shank. Alright, so you wrap it about 3/4 of the way down the hook shank, and then take a razor blade or even a pair of scissors will work just fine, and you're going to cut this kind of at an angle parallel to the hook. Not completely parallel, obviously. And then cutting that angle will help taper that body nicely. And then you can wrap your thread the rest of the way to it. I like to go back over it again. You don't have to make every wrap touching turns with this. But I do like to go back over it pretty well and make sure it's attached as best I can. and then back. Okay. So then you're going to grab the first bag that says Uni-French, small oval tinsel, the tip. I'm going to kind of move through these, but don't be afraid to stop and pause if you need to, and you know, rewind and all that stuff. So you'll take that, and you're going to tie that in kind of on the quartering away side of the hook shank, and I'm kind of laying that over where that gut ends. And I'm following that back, or wrapping that back rather, until I'm just before the barb valley, which is right where the barb meets the hook right here. And then come forward, touching turns, about 4 turns, and you can skip ahead. I call those, these big wide wraps like this, skipping ahead, and all that does basically is just get your thread up out of the way for you. Alright, so now you're going to take your tinsel and do 3 turns. 1, 2, 3. And then you take your thread and go back. And if you have to unwind a little farther, you want to make it so you have a nice even tie off right next to where your last wrap is. And then you're going to wrap your thread forward again, going back over the tinsel, and it should wrap right alongside underneath next to the other tinsel where you tied in. And you're going to go forward until you're about maybe 1 millimeter or 1/2 millimeter shy of the hook point. And you can go ahead and cut away the tinsel. You can go a little far forward actually if you like. It's really not much difference. I prefer to use a pair of scissors I don't like to cut tinsel just because it's made of metal. And the metal can kind of damage your scissors over time, even though it's a very small, thin tinsel. Alright, so now I'm going to go back and make sure that our thread is, again, just shy of the hook point. And all I was doing just there is just kind of filling in any spaces between the thread where I thought there might be a lump. But we'll be able to take care of that, no problem. So now you're going to grab the next package, which is labeled Tag, and it's going to be yellow silk floss. There's 2 ways to do this. You can wrap the silk floss around the thread, which will double the amount of floss that you've got, and double your wraps going down and back, but that also makes it a little bit thicker. Or you can tie it in right by the end, just like this. I'll leave it up to you, but I think this is the method I'm going to go with, is just tying it in by the end. And then after you tie it in, wrap forward until all of that excess silk has been covered by thread. And then you can skip your thread forward. Now take your silk and start doing touching turns all the way back sorry about that. Touching turns all the way back to the tinsel. And then rocking your silk like this can kind of help lay those fibers down a little bit better, and that'll actually help snug them up against that tinsel a little better. And then do touching turns the whole way back forward again. Now we're going to wrap this forward until we're ahead of the hook point. And there we're almost ahead of it, and there, okay. Now we can come back and tie that off. I like to tie that off 2 or 3 turns. And then we'll cut away the rest of the silk. This little bit of excess, I like to leave a little bit just so if I do have to return or back up a little bit, I have something to grab onto when I back up. Likely this won't happen, but it's there. So I'll just take some thread, wrap over that, just so it's flat to the hook. Doesn't have to be covered. And now you're going to wrap your thread back again over that floss until you are again a millimeter or so behind the hook point. You're going to grab the package that says tail. That is the golden pheasant crest. And when you take it out, you should have a golden pheasant piece of crest like this. So what you'll do is you'll take that and you'll line it up over the top of the hook. The tail itself, right to your tie-in point, should be 1.5 times the hook gap. If you look at the hook gap here, that's about 1.5, maybe a shade longer, but right to the tie-in, it should be 1.5 or so. So then what you'll do is you'll take your scissors and you'll trim away these, just these little fuzzy fibers down here at the base of the golden pheasant feather. Once you trim those away, you can then kind of work your thumb a little bit, very gently, along the spine, and kind of change the curvature so it almost matches the curvature of the hook. That's I think a good way to, good direction to follow with it. Now if you'd like it to ride a little bit along that floss a little bit better, you can use your thumbnail and bend it right at the tie-in. And your tie-in should definitely be somewhere within this first millimeter or so of the feather that is supplied. And then go ahead and tie that in. 3, 4, 5 turns, gradually going forward. Just make sure that it's in position so it's perfectly in line with the hook and the point. That looks good. Now go ahead and tie the rest of that down to the hook. And then go back to the original tie-in point for your tail. And then grab the next package labeled butt. That'll be the black ostrich herl. And this one you're going to grab the herl and you're going to orient it so that way the fuzzy side is facing upward. You'll see that the quill stands vertical, and then you're going to pull away the tip here so that way you're stripping it clear. And then you're going to tie that in vertical to the side of the fly. Alright, so now you've tied that in. Take the herl, pull it towards you, then continue forward and straight up. That should have it oriented so the fuzzy part is facing now back and the quill is facing forward. Then start wrapping with the quill basically touching turns as close as you can get those together. I try to shoot for 4 turns if possible. 3, 4, and then tie that off. Carry that forward just a little bit so there's a little bit of the herl that's left underneath there, and when you clip it off, if you need some later, it's there. If you've done it right where you've tied off where you've tied off the butt, your thread should just about be touching the hook point. Next, grab the package that says rib. This is your Vivis medium oval silver tinsel. Now you're going to take this and strip the end. Use your thumb, and you can use a pair of tweezers if you like to, but strip some of that outer sheathing. And what that's going to do is expose the silk core. There's a couple of layers to it, and that'll expose that silk core right there. By exposing that silk core, you now have a softer way of tying in your tinsel without creating a lump underneath the fly. So now when you tie this in, you want to tie it in on the opposite side of the hook of you at about the 5 o'clock position, the quartering away side. And what that looks like on the other side. It's somewhere around the 5 or 5:30 position, just so that way you're not seeing the starting point of the tinsel. And then you can tie that forward, flat to the body. And then wrap back. Now anywhere in here, if you see like a low spot or a high spot, now's a good time to use your thread and fill that in. Okay. Now you've got your tinsel tied. Next you want to grab your tinsel and you're going to do kind of like some mock wraps where you're just figuring out where you want your tinsel to go. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. At the second wrap is where we're going to start tying in our floss. So you want to figure out where your second wrap is going to fall. So we'll lay out the 5 wraps of tinsel that we're going to lay, roughly. That looks pretty good to me. So my second wrap of tinsel starts here. That's how far my floss is going to go. So now you're going to grab the package that says body number 1. Which is the crimson seals, or excuse me, the crimson silk floss. So you're going to take that and tie that in right by its end. Make sure all of those are, all of the excess tails are tied to the hook shank, and then you can skip your thread to the front and start wrapping your floss. You're going to do touching turns with the floss all the way back to the butt, and then when you get to the butt you will turn around and come back, essentially double layering your floss. When you get to the butt, make sure you get right up tight next to it. And just like the tail, you're going to wrap until you're just a little bit past where you started. And you'll tie that off. And then make sure that all of those excess tails are either tied to the hook shank or trimmed away. But leave yourself a little extra room in case you have to back up. That's why this was so short for me, was because I actually did have to back up. You likely won't have that issue. Now that you've done that, you can take your scissor handles or stone and just rub the floss a little bit. That'll smooth it out and kind of settle in those fibers, get them kind of flattening out and filling in those peaks and valleys. You've got a stray strand somewhere. like I do, you can pluck that out, and it shouldn't cause any more issues. Now take your tinsel, and once again, figure out where number 2 crosses, and back your thread up to that point. You can just wrap backwards. I'm already pretty close, so I'm going to stay right there. Now you're going to grab the bag that says body hackle, crimson, throat hackle, yellow. Grab the red feather from that bag. That's the crimson feather. Now you're going to take that one and you're going to grab it by the tip, all the way out on the very, very tip. And after you grab that tip, start stroking these feathers out, these fibers, and you can just pull right down the center of the feather and it'll splay them all out nicely. So you'll take that and tie that in on the very top of the fly, very top of the hook shank. And make sure that you tie that all the way down to the body and then back to that point where you tied it in. And grab the bag that says body number 2, crimson seal's fur. Now the seal's fur, you can use dubbing wax on this. You can use a little bit of cobbler's wax, but what I actually find works really well is just lick your fingers a little bit and start to rub them together to start drying them. And when they reach that tacky point, that's when it's best to dub seal's fur. So then you'll take your seal's fur and you'll twist it and dub it onto the thread, going in one direction. I always go clockwise. Excuse me, I always go counterclockwise. So I'll twist, let go, twist, let go. And that ensures I get a nice tight wrap that's consistent. And then you'll do that and continue doing that with the seal's fur until you get to nearly the front of the hook. It's alright if it gets a little bit thick. But the key point is to make sure that you cover up all the thread underneath. That covers the thread that you're using and covers the underbody. There it goes again. Sorry about that. Pretty sure I heavy-handed that one. That was my fault. Well, we're pretty much there anyway. Okay, so now as you can see, I've got a little bit left on the front here. I'm going to take this and just wrap back onto that seal's fur just a little bit. And then if you've got a brush of some sort, you can kind of brush this out and make it fuzzy. If you don't want it so fuzzy, you can trim it down a little. Won't be too obvious with the trimming, but okay. Now grab your tinsel and you'll wrap your tinsel those 5 turns. You want your second wrap to cross directly in front of your hackle. And then if it works out right, you should be able to tie off on the underside of the hook shank. And when you tie your tinsel off, you'll have to clip that pretty much all the way. And be careful when you tie it off because it's like a razor, because it is metal. So cutting that, or where you cut that off can cut your thread, like I just had happen. Okay, and you can use your nail to just move those, hack those pieces of tinsel around a little. Alright, now you'll take your hackle and, being very gentle, start wrapping it around right behind the tinsel. And you want it so that way it tucks in right basically underneath the tinsel. And while you're doing that, direct the feathers backwards, the fibers backwards, by pulling them like this. And just keep those tucked in right behind that tinsel. And when you get to the front, you can go ahead, you can make one more wrap, or you can tie that right off right there. I'm going to go ahead and tie this right off. Now, to tie it off easily, you can use your fingers and just kind of pull away some of these fibers that are on the side here, which exposes part of the stem, and you can just tie that. Tie right on that. And then clip that away. And just use your fingers and stroke all those back a little bit so that way they're all going in the same direction. Now grab the package labeled, well, the same hackle package, but grab your yellow hackle feathers this time. And with these, what you want to do is find out what part of this yellow feather is the same length as the longest part on the red, the crimson. So in this case, by splaying them out, we can see that those pretty much start right in here. So we'll go up to the top here, the tip, and strip away right up to where the longest part starts. Okay. And then where it ends is back here a little bit. We'll go ahead and just strip away the shorter stuff, the fluff. You don't need that. Now take your yellow hackle and tie that in. It could be on the side of the shank, could be on the top of the shank. That part doesn't matter. Fold back the little tip that you made and then tie in over that as well. That will help keep that feather locked down, so when you go to wrap, it won't come apart. It won't pull out on you. Now, while you're holding this feather up, take your fingers and draw those fibers backwards. It's kind of called folding or doubling, and I just broke my hackle. Okay. Alright, so find your package that says throat hackle yellow and grab your yellow feather. Take that feather and hold it by the tip, and just like the red one, splay it outward. That's going to give you a nice idea of where your material starts and how long it is. So now hold it up to the fly, and the longest part on the red, line that up to the yellow and see where they match. Where does the yellow start that's the same size? It looks like it's right up here. So we're going to strip away part of the stem up here. Strip away the fuzz and the shorter stuff down here at the other end. And now go up to the front and tie in by that tip on the shorter end of the feather. And once you've tied in, take that little tip and pull that back, tie over that, and that's going to create kind of a lockdown, and it won't pull out on you while you're wrapping. Now take your hackle and start pulling your feather fibers backwards a little bit, and keep pulling them backwards as you wrap them around the hook shank. You're essentially doubling your hackle, folding it back. And as you pull it back along the hook, as you wrap, it should give you a really nice profile. And you want those hackles to be touching turns. Now if you reach a point where you can't wrap really any more yellow, which I'm at that point, you can just pull away the feather fibers like you did with the red one on the hook shank. Or use tweezers if you need to. You see what I'm doing here is I'm just using my pointer to pinch off and hold that feather. So I don't have to tie it off yet. I can just hold that feather right to the hook shank. And then work with pulling these out of the way so I can tie off. And leave a nice smooth tie off without messed up feather pieces. And then clip away the stem. And now I'm just starting to wrap a little bit and building up a little bit of kind of a well, it's not really a term, but it's not really a thing, but kind of like a pre-head type base. And when we go to tie our wing in here shortly, the whole front section here will be relatively even, and it'll be much easier to tie in those other pieces. I'm just adding a little wax to my thread. That'll just prevent my thread from slipping as I wrap more. Sometimes I'll back wrap at an angle like this for a minute, and that'll kind of help my hackle kind of pull down and sit down a little out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and build this up a little bit more. Add a little bit more wax. And the wax portion I'm putting right up against that hackle. That'll prevent any kind of like a thread avalanche. I'm sure you've all had your thread kind of bundle tied up in the same spot, and then it all just kind of slides and shifts down. And doing that with your wax will help keep that from happening so often. Okay. Now you're going to find your bag that says Underwing, and that's your golden pheasant tippets. Now you'll take your tippets and you'll put them back to back. If they're kind of being stubborn, because they're concave, see how they're curved, you can take your thumbnail and just put a very gentle crease in it, kind of farther down in the feather, and that'll kind of help straighten them, and then you can put them together better. Now once you pair them together, they're going to kind of form a natural curve in one direction. What you want to have is the barring to be lined up on both the tip and in the middle and the second bar, but the end one is quite important. So once you've got them lined up, you'll see the curve that it has. We'll follow that curve along the hook. So when you tie this in, it'll tie in like that. So first what we'll do to prepare these is this fluff down here, the short stuff, we're going to get rid of that, and the same thing on the opposite side on the top. If your hackle fibers here in the middle kind of get in the way, you can just kind of part them to the side a little bit, just like that. Now I'm lining up this second bar with the butt of the fly. This is kind of a modern method versus how it was back in the time period this fly was created. But as a modern type method for this fly, I kind of think this looks neater, it looks cleaner, and it offers it's very pleasing to the eye to me. So lining up the butt with that bar is how I'm going about it today. So by lining that up, you now find where your tie-in is going to be, your tie-in point, which is going to be right here. So you can drape your thread over it and kind of get an idea, and then you can pull your thread a little bit tight, and that'll create a crease in that. Now if that crease stays and everything goes well for you, you can leave it, and we can kind of work on continuing on from here. If you have an issue, you can use a pair of tweezers, or you can use a pair of flat nose pliers. I have these right here, which I got off of Amazon, and you can pinch these stems flat, and that'll actually help lay them on the hook. This one here seems to tie in pretty well, so I'm just going to leave it and continue forward. I'm going to add a little bit more wax at this point. 3, 4, 5 more. It still looks good. Everything's lined up rather nicely. Pull that forward just a hair. And then we're going to wrap backwards again. Get a little more wax on there. And then we'll go backwards. And you want to go back up against your hackle right here, as close to the hackle as you can. And next, grab the bag that says main wing. We're going to set these wings next. So we're going to pull these out. Now you see the way that they are already pre-married, ready to go. So I've gone through the process of marrying them for you. Now if you'd like, you can take them apart color by color and try marrying them yourself to get to practice, or you can use them as is. For this purpose for today, we're going to use them as is. So take these and you're going to put these back to back as well. Make sure they're even on the top and on the bottom, that all the fibers line up, and that they're even at the tips. If they're uneven over here, you should be able to take them and slide them like this. And they should slide right along each other. Line those up good, and then just use your finger to very gently kind of tap them back into place, so that way they're all nice and even on top and bottom. Now you can change this angle here by simply rotating the wing between your fingers. So you can have an angle like that. You can have a much steeper angle. I'm going to go with this one. I like this the best. So now, once you've got that and everything's nice and even and straight, hold them by the top right here and just kind of see how they're set between my fingers like this. You want it so they almost make like a little canoe underneath, like that. And that you'll just tuck right over the top of this feather, of the underwing. Now if the underwing wants to poke through the top, you can use your fingers. Get your fingers a little bit wet, some saliva, and you can preen them down like this. That'll help kind of compact them a little bit to get them out of the way. Or when they're dry, you can clip them. And I can show you how to do that as well. Again, that's another modern method. So once you've got the wing either clipped, or what you would basically do is figure out how deep your wing is and just use scissors to cut along and remove a portion of the top here. I personally do not like the tippet sticking through the top of my wings, at least not on this fly. So I'll show you how to trim that later instead of doing it now, because sometimes you can do it now and kind of mess up. And so again, get your wing is like a boat and place that over the top of your tippets. If the underwing comes through, it comes through. But you want to line it up so that way, kind of pretend that's not there. Line it up so the tip of the wing is just about touching the tip of the tail, and that the angle of the wing matches the curvature and angle of the tail. Once you've got that and you're satisfied that you've got the wing correct in the right position, you can then take your left hand and pinch the wing right up close over the top of your throat. And while you've got that pinched, take your thread, loop it right up against your fingers once over the top of the wing, and just let it hang gently. Don't pull, don't put any pressure on it, but don't let up on your pinch either. See how right now the feather's kind of supporting the bobbin. So now you'll take your right hand and gently pinch the butt ends, and kind of gently push up on the back side of the butt ends over here and push down on the front. If you can see what I'm doing, it kind of looks like it's settling the thread down. It's helping that thread settle, creating the crease inside the wing, in the wing itself. Now you can put a little pressure on it and do a second wrap, and then a third. And if it starts to roll a little, the wing starts to roll a little, just grab it and pull it back a little bit with your right hand. And remember, don't let up on your grip on your left hand. Keep that still. A little more pressure. 4 and 5. You should be able to let off now and see where you're at. Okay. So I've got a little bit of a fold right here. The red is folding up underneath. So we'll pinch back in the same spot and unwind. Now to correct that, first you have to get the piece of feather that is folded out from underneath, so it's all showing again. And now line that back up again at the tail. And then gently get your positioning with your left hand again. If you have to rotate the vise to look at the opposite side, you can do that as well. Just don't loosen your grip. While keeping your grip here on your left hand, make that turn again. Now the problem you might run into is, as you can see, is golden pheasant is starting to fatigue. Golden pheasant doesn't hold on very long and is only good for 1 or 2 tie-ins. Alright, so do the 1 wrap over, help the thread settle like we did before. Two more. And there you should be able to lift and see. I like that better. Now you can just work on rotating the material just a little bit if it needs it. The golden pheasant seems to be what gave out right here in the front. It's okay. Doesn't look terrible. Okay, so now we can take a quick look at the wing, how it's going to sit. That'll look nice. Now this makes people cringe because it is a modern method. Excuse me, a modern method. It is not something that is an old school method. It wasn't something they did, at least not that I'm aware of, when these patterns were created. But for looks purposes, if you're someone that you know, wants this golden pheasant kind of out of the way, what you do is you get your scissors, get down between the wing, and very gently snip away a portion of those golden tippet feathers. And if you can get them all, now if you'll notice though, my thread is starting to slide a little bit up front. So right here where the head is, where I just tied in, I'm going to put a drop of Sally Hansen's. That's just some clear nail polish. I only need a little bit, so I'll just get some on my dubbing needle here and put it right here where our tie-in is for the wing, and that should hold everything in place. Alright, while that is setting up, grab the next bag, which is your jungle cock. Should have 2 jungle cock feathers in there. And now each one of these, what you'll do is, it's better to hold them with tweezers. You'll hold them up and line them up so that way they reach about that second turn of tinsel. Now I've got a few hackle fibers here that are in the way, so very gently and close to the hook shank, trim that away. Just a couple individual barbs. Those are ones that are going to probably get in the way of the jungle cock a little bit and prevent it from sitting correctly. So now when you line that up, it should be right by your fuzzy part on the feather. So we'll take that fuzz and strip most of it away, leaving just a tiny bit at the base. And that we're going to trim with our scissors. So it looks like that. And now we'll take that, tie that to the side of the wing. And you should only need to do this with one wrap. And then the same on the other side. And when you do the other side, it's 2 wraps. If you only do 1 wrap, you'll go to turn your vise at one point and the feather will fall out. So again, just strip away the fuzz. Use your scissors to trim a little bit with those last fibers. Lay that jungle cock on there, and then tie it in. And your fly should look like this. Next bag you're going to grab is the mallard roof. Now I gave you a whole pair of bronze mallard because this can be a little bit tricky. So to make it easier, once this wing and everything has dried, you can trim away the majority of the extra material up here. That should be good. I don't have to go overboard yet. I don't have to create a full head. So now with the bronze mallard, what you'll do is you'll come down into the lower part of the feather here, and right where it starts getting nice and mottled and brown, and find that nice long point. Use your scissors and just trim the base off right here. And then strip away the short side, this fuzzy, this short stuff. We don't need that. Do the same with the opposite side. So they should both look like this. Okay, so next, what you want to do is you want to find where this brown mottling is really good. If your feather has a little less, like I've got, you'll have more gray down here. You can go a little bit farther up the feather and just trim that part away, the shorter stuff, and then save that for another fly or something. What you want to have is a section of your bronze mallard, let's say about that, so it covers probably 2.5 or 3 of the colors. The bustard, the golden pheasant, and the yellow. That looks good. And then again, trim the stem. Actually cut the stem, leaving the stem on there. You don't want to cut it off of the stem. The stem is crucial to keeping the feather at good length and keeping it all together. And now you're going to do the same thing for the opposite side. Find out where on there it's about the same length. So after you're done, you should have 2 pieces. They look like this. Alright, so now you want to take those and you want to hold them just like I am here. Line them up so the short side of the tip are touching. And then the stems should look kind of like that. Now these might be different lengths a little bit, so you want to go make sure that this end is what's lined up, not the end of the stems. And then you'll take these and you can actually fold them together back to back so they look like this. Align them so they're the same length, and then holding them by the tip, you can kind of curve the body by almost petting it with your finger, and holding it by the stems, kind of like the canoe method, place them down over the fly so that way one goes on each side of the fly. Keep the stems also on their respective sides of the fly. And you want the length of the bronze mallard to go up the wing about 3/4 of the wing. Once you've got those lined up that way, stems on both sides of the hook, not on top, but almost to the sides of it. Hold them together with your pointer. Go ahead and make 1, 2 wraps, but let the vise or let the bobbin create all the pressure. Don't pull on or tug on it. Let the bobbin create the pressure. I'm going to go for 3, and now you can let off and see where you're at. Now if you've got a little bit of golden pheasant showing like I've got, take your thumb and forefinger and you can push on those very gently from the outside and just push them forward a little. Use these stems here and you can make little adjustments. And now this is about what you should have it to this point. Next, grab the bag that says GP Crest, Blue and Gold Macaw, topping and horns. Grab the yellow golden pheasant crest out of the bag. That would be this one. Now, we might have to do a little manipulating on it. So you see the shape of this doesn't quite match the shape of the fly. So what we need to do is shape our crest here to the shape of right here. So by doing that, first figure out your length. How long does this need to be to tie in and reach the tail? I'll be tying it in pretty much right at the very tip, which is about what I wanted. But I also need it to have more of a curvature here. So on the underside of your tippet, of your crest, use your thumb and start creating the bend. Just very gradually using your thumb to bend it. Okay. That's kind of got the curve that I need there, but now I need this to come up a little bit and reach the tail. So now from the outside, we're going to do the same. And that's going to help straighten out that topping, getting it to where we need it to be. There might be a little bit of fiddling involved. But just remember, curve it a little bit from the underside to get the curve here, and then curve it from the backside to straighten it out. And once you've got that figured out, go ahead and tie that in right there on top of the front of the fly. I actually need to do a little bit of trimming to make this fit. So what we'll do is very gently trim away the bronze mallard tails. And then I'm going to trim away some of this as well. Creating more of a flat spot right there for my topping to lay on. And go ahead and tie in your topping. Well, it doesn't quite look the way I want it to, so I'm going to take this back off, and what I want is more of a pronounced hump in the front, so I can actually take the wing and kind of force it almost. But that puts pressure on all your other materials, so you gotta be kind of gentle doing that. I might spend a few more minutes doing some extra repairs. Alright, so once again, Tapping on the front, on the top, and tying in right at the head. It's just a little bit of fidgeting and aligning the feathers just to kind of give them the shape and the look that I'd like. And down here I'll trim away this piece of seal's fur. Okay, so the topping is on. Now grab the blue and gold macaw horns. Should have two of those. That's these right here. And when you tie these in, you'll tie them in so that way the blue is facing up and the yellow is facing in. You'll see there's a little bit of yellow towards the front here, but a lot of yellow on the inside. So take that, and I like to have them crisscross kind of somewhere right over the middle of the fly. Or excuse me, right over the middle of the back of the fly where the last bar of the tippet is. If they crisscross right there, I kind of like that. So one wrap on that, and then your other side. Tie it in the same spot and about the same length. Remember, that's two wraps for the other side. And they should look something like that. Okay, once you've got that, you can take another dabble of Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails or clear head cement and just coat the front. Not on the eye, but kind of everything else. We're going to let that dry for a moment. We'll let that dry till it's not completely solid, but close. And then we'll go ahead and we'll shave with the razor blade to form the head. Alright, that's had a little time to dry. So now we'll take our fingers and pinch the whole fly out in the upper half. Use a razor blade to very gently cut at an angle down towards the eye. Be careful not to cut the gut. And if you don't have one of these, I highly recommend it. It's a cauterizer called the Thread Zap 2. I find it on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. And it works great. And all you do is just burn away excess material that is bothersome and stringy and kind of just creating a headache. And then once you do that, use some wax. I use a lighter to heat up my wax ball and then heavily coat the thread with wax and start piling it up in front of the head. And that's how I'm able to get a nice rounded shaped head right there. You gotta get a little bit more wax on there, that's fine. And then when you're finished, wrap up back towards the edge of your hackle and back towards the edge of your wing, and make sure there's a nice clear defined line right here where your head starts. Once you feel you've got that, you can go ahead and do a whip finish. And have your whip finish right there at the back of the head. Now you can just do a little adjusting, use your tweezers to pull this one back up into position. Make sure everything's in position before finishing with your head. Come on now. Okay, everything's adjusted properly. I like the way that looks. So now I'm going to go ahead with some Veneered Celire Clear. You can use a regular clear head cement. I like the Celire. This goes on nicely, soaks in really good, and it if it leaches into the feathers or anything, then it won't show up. If you do it with black, that'll leach into the feathers, and it could really make a big difference. So we're doing the clear first, and then we'll do a coat of black over the top of that. There we go, nice healthy coat of clear. If you don't have Celire, like I said, you can use Sally Henson's. You can use any clear thin head cement. You can use Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. That works well too. But that just about completes the salmon fly kit, the Kate salmon fly on a size 3/0 hook. If you guys found the video helpful, if you found it informative, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed and you're watching this, get yourself subscribed to the channel. If you get subscribed to the channel, you'll have an opportunity to win this fly kit and tie this fly yourself. I do offer the winner gets to tie it with me under full instruction while I tie it with you. But this video will serve as kind of a plan B in the event you and I are not able to coordinate and you'd like to get to tying it. That doesn't happen, but in the event that it does, this is my backup plan. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have yourselves a wonderful night, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.